Hello E39 Source, and welcome to the summer update of my 2000 BMW E39 M5. So it's been actually far too long since I've posted even a video featuring the car, let alone an update. It was actually last winter. I had the car under a cover sitting in the garage. We came out in February sometime and did a start, the first start of the winter. So thank God those days are long behind us. It's today the 1st of August 2015. Been an incredibly rainy summer until as of late, where everything has now started to get very dry. But anyways, I thought I would go around, tell you what I've been doing, some future plans, some past activities that have been completed, and otherwise just an update. So last night I cleaned up the car. I did a Codizeno Z6. I cleaned off the wheels from brake dust. We treated the tires, cleaned up the exhaust, vacuum formats, the normal cleanup, clean the windows, stuff like that. So I figured this was a good opportunity to do it while we have a semi-sunny day. I'm going to reference my master spreadsheet file over here to kind of go through the things I've done over the last few months. First thing I tackled this year after getting the car out on the road and driving it a little bit was a new rear sway bar. The one that was on there was the stock bar. It had probably never been replaced. I did the links about 4 or 5 years ago. But I figured it was time to replace that due to one reason. Laying under the car, doing some work on other things, I had noticed that there was about a 4-inch segment on that original OEM rear sway bar that the paint had flaked off and it was becoming quite rusty. So I did some research. I could replace the stock bar for, I don't remember the numbers now, let's say $250 or something like that. Or I could go with a performance bar for about the same price. So my original intentions were to get the Dynon rear sway bar until I found out from a few Dynon dealers that that part is no longer made and no longer available anywhere. So we ended up going with an Eibach bar. I'm going to get something to lay on because I'm wearing a decent shirt right now, and I will show you. Lighting is less than ideal, but it is back here. I went with the red one. I think that was the only option, was the red one. I ended up getting it from, I want to say VAC Motorsport, or no, actually I got it from Eibach's primary website. So it's a little thicker than the stock bar. It certainly did, at least I think, tighten up the rear end. It just felt like it had a little bit less sway. Did the install myself. I didn't end up filming a DIY because I had never done it before and it would have been very honky. So if I ever do another one, you can certainly expect a DIY. It wasn't too bad. So 18mm, I believe, bar, the original 16.5, I want to say, don't quote me on that. I did change the mounts to the Beast Power mounts from VAC Motorsports. Reason being, a lot of people said once you thicken up that sway bar, it's going to start breaking off the OEM mounts. So I think the mounts were about 120 bucks for 2, and I did replace the links at the same time with stock OEM BMW links. So all of that would be new back here. And we can also see something else that's new that has never been on this car before from this view. I don't think we're going to be able to read that, but that is Eisenman Race. We'll talk a little more about that later on in the video. My next project actually took me almost 2 months from start to finish, and it was a much bigger undertaking. You guys already know about this. I did a full DIY. So actually, when I was at the Cleveland Auto Show in probably what was March, a user on M5 board was selling a PDC retrofit kit for the 2000 M5. So the 2000s, when optioned with PDC, only came with 4 rear sensors. They didn't come with the front until 2001 production, beginning in September of 2000. So I had always kind of toyed with the idea, boy, it would be cool to retrofit the fronts, and that always looked like such a pain in the ass. I never got around to doing it. So I got the kit for about $250. It came with the bumper carrier, came with 4 sensors, came with the wiring harness, came with the new impact strips right here. Came with everything but the actual module in the trunk. So I picked up the module on eBay. It took me a couple months to figure out the compatibility and to get the wiring down, and I had to custom pin a switch and a front gong speaker in the driver's footwell. But we were successful in that. It works just as a 2001, 2, or 3 E39 with front PDC would. It's installed very well, pretty much factory. And I'm actually really proud of that. That was a big undertaking, at least by my standards, for the electronic aspect. We had to do a little bit of coding, and it was fun. So there aren't very many 2000 M5s with front PDC, and I'm glad that I've got one of them. Now moving on to something I had not planned on doing until I moved to California in about 18 months' time. I originally had, and last time you guys saw this car, it had Michelin Pilot Sport All Season 3 tires on all 4 points. They had maybe 5,000, 6,000 miles on them. I was working on the back of the car. I replaced a lot of underbody trim this year, which I'll show you in a little bit. It was all there, mostly. There were a couple of broken clips on it and stuff like that, but I just replaced it for, and I'm not going to say cosmetics because it's under the car, but integrity of the components, I suppose. There were broken clips and stuff. So anyways, while I was doing that, there's two 8mm bolts that hold up this little mud flap thing right here, and I put them both in, and the one was tighter than the other, and I figured it'd stay. So it turns out it fell out when I was driving, and I found that 8mm bolt a day later right inside of my tire, which infuriated me. Sure, I could have plugged the tire. I don't like that. This is a performance car, this is an M5. I don't like plugged tires. It's just not, it isn't really by the book. So we ended up selling those tires, and for what only cost me about $100, we now run a very healthy set of Michelin Pilot Super Sports in the stock size, 275/35 ZR18 and 245/35 ZR18 or 245/40. I think they're 40s in the front. So that actually made a difference. I haven't driven these in rain. I'm sure they wouldn't be too good. I don't drive this car in rain. I haven't driven in the snow. I probably never drive this. I will never drive this car in snow again. But it was a nice little difference there with those tires. So that's new as of probably March or April. Last fall I did the rear brakes. We did new pads, new rotors, and a parking brake rebuild on the rear. Which was largely successful, and I say largely because this side, the rear right passenger side of the car, the cable that runs from the parking brake handle down above all that shielding in the transmission tunnel and then comes out by the carrier, it's a Bowden cable, so it's got shielding on it, and then in the center there's a stainless or, I don't know, metal braided line that when you pull it, pulls the pad tension open over here. That line broke. The line itself is about $30, but it's quite an involved install process, and I do plan on doing some driveline work on this car in the future, so I'll put that new line in then. In the meantime, we only have the driver's side of the parking brake working, and I calibrated it very well, and I actually haven't found an incline where half of the parking brake won't hold the car, and these cars are notorious for having just crappy parking brakes, and largely they do, but it's calibrated in a way that it holds the car anywhere. It's not going to stop me going 20 miles an hour. It's not going to lock up wheels by any means, but certainly more than safe and definitely usable until I can replace that other line. And that is one of the few things wrong with this car right now. So anyways, we did those rear rotors and pads and parking brake last fall. This spring I moved on to the front brakes. I had purchased the parts over the winter, installed new OEM rotors in the front, Hawk HPS pads. I run those pads on all four corners of this car. 2 weeks, the wheels themselves are barely dusty at all, so I highly recommend the Hawk HPS. They have a new one, 5.0 or something like that. I didn't try those. I stuck with the Hawk HPS. And while doing that job, I didn't have any issues over here on the passenger side, but on the driver's side, when I had the caliper out and I put the new pads in, I had to compress the piston in the caliper, so I put a piece of wood over the piston, and then I put the C-clamp on there and started tightening, and I could not get the piston to retract. I had the cap off the brake fluid reservoir on the firewall and everything, and I could not get that piston to go. So you know what? I thought this job needs to get done tonight. I was frustrated, so I put a breaker bar on the handle of my C-clamp, and I just gave it hell. Amazingly, my C-clamp didn't break, the caliper didn't break, the piston did retract. The inside of those pistons were solid rust, and I determined that caliper needed to be replaced. So I looked up the OEM replacements, new. They were quite expensive. Went to eBay, sourced a set of E39 M5 front calipers that we can't unfortunately see through these wheels in this lighting. Car had, the calipers the car came from had like 52,000 miles on it. It was a 2003, very low mileage. I don't know if it was wrecked or what happened to it, but ended up getting those for like $200 for the set. They're in perfect condition. The inside of the pistons look new, the seals look new. So I had those put on, and at the time I had those put on, I did stainless, ECS tuning, stainless steel braided brake lines. So the brake line from the caliper into the hard line coming from the ABS module, they're stainless. From the ABS module under the hood, I'll show you in a little bit, there's two real short lines in there. I had those replaced with the stainless lines as well. I bought the kit that included the rear lines here's where I ran into trouble. I had Dave Walter BMW, this is probably my mistake, in Akron, Ohio, do the job for me. And they didn't have any trouble with the front right. The front left, though, the old line was seized onto the hard line from the module, so they had to replace the hard line from the module. It ended up being, and I'm probably embarrassed, I am embarrassed to say this, around $1,500 to install 2 calipers and replace lines. It's just ludicrous. So the front's perfect. The backs, they looked at those and said if they tried to do that, it would be the same thing. They would have to drop the fuel tank, replace the hard lines from the module all the way back, and then put the stainless lines on. So I can actually see some rust on these calipers back here. The pistons are perfectly fine. But sometime later down the line, I probably will do a rear brake service, including remanufactured, rebuilt, slightly used, or new rear calipers, which I'll then go and do the hard brake lines up to the ABS DSC module, and we'll have the stainless lines in the back. Of course, obviously, we had a brake fluid flush done at that time, and it didn't make an incredible difference in pedal feel. It had been about 3 years since I did a brake fluid flush. You know, I don't think I was at danger before. Some of the original lines did have cracking in the rubber, but that's simply an outside shielding component of the line itself. So that's where we stand on brakes. They're about an 8 out of 10 right now. We got to get that rear sorted out in the future, but that is not my top priority with the car for the rest of 2015. We'll talk about that shortly. Okay, over the winter, when I started the car and I backed it up in the garage, we took a look at the floor and it was covered in 2 substances, oil and power steering fluid. The oil is not a leak. That isn't entirely truthful. It has a very minorly leaky front left, whatever bank 1 maybe, valve cover gasket leak. I'm saying and that thing sticks in there. In the course of about 2 months, we'll get a little run right by that bolt that comes down on the plastic there, and it's just a little drop of oil. Yeah, it's going to be addressed, but I'm certainly not going to pay big money for it right now. So the oil on the ground was actually from a spill that I had last year, a bit of a mishap. When I put this cap back on, it wasn't actually the round E46M3 cap, it was the stock cap. And sorry for a dirty engine bay right now. I had a shop looking at the car yesterday and he took this off to listen for chain slap, and it got some oil around here I've got to clean up yet. But the old cap, I put it back on, it only half seated, and I had oil all over the place. So the residual oil sitting in the pan and all that dripped out on the floor. So there's the oil leak that we saw last year. The other thing was an issue, and that was a power steering line. It was the one, I believe, rack to cooler, the one that's under pressure, and that line had been leaking for probably 2 years. So I had the dealer replace it this year. It was not expensive at all. It took him like 3 hours. So I'm fairly happy to say right now this car has, aside from the little run on the valve cover gasket, it has no leaks. Parked in the garage for 2 months, it's totally dry. The belly pan's dry last time I looked at it. When they had the belly pan off, I don't think we're going to be able to see it down there, they totally cleaned it up, dried it off, put it in there so it'd be easy to tell if it were leaking, and it isn't. So that's the work I had done under here this year. And while we're here, I'll show you those 2 stainless lines right there. Not even sure what they are. But they come out of the brake module and go over there somewhere. The next job took me inside. I do remember filming a video on this, so you guys have probably seen it. It's one of my favorite interior modifications I think I've done. That would be the performance pedal set. So the one from BMW that looks nearly identical to that doesn't fit an E39 M5. The accelerator pedal is about 2 inches too short. They didn't make one for the longer E39 M5 pedal. So this one is from a different website, the name of which escapes me right now. I probably linked it in that video if you're interested. Go back on E39 stores and search for pedal, and I'm sure you'll find the video. But I did go ahead and install those. I think it gives a really nice look to the car, and I love the feel of these pedals driving. With shoes or barefoot, it's just like a really tactile, heavy quality feel these pedals have. So I'm really happy with that. And I did fix the top 2 screws I couldn't get to work. I got some screws and nuts and threaded that on there, and it's all good and tight now. Moving on to the exhaust. Over the winter, I did decide to do something a little different. I did actually like the stock exhaust. I liked the look. I liked the fact that it was kind of understated, if you will. But seeing that this is not a daily driven car anymore, and it's more of I'm gonna say a fun toy, I did want something with a little more bite. So I did a ton of research. I originally wanted Brittleman, which proved to be impossible to find, or Kelleners, same thing. Those don't exist anymore. So we originally went with Eisenman Sport. Did the 76mm tips, ordered those from, I believe, Bimmerzone. Took about 6 weeks for those to arrive, had them installed. We replaced the hangers, the mounts, all the hardware, all of that was new. It is clamped, not welded, in case I want to change it. Had that done at a shop only because the bolts were so rusty. I didn't even want to deal with breaking off bolts and then having to tear the trunk apart to get to the top end and drill them out. Oh my God, I didn't want to do that. So I had the Sport installed. Thing with the Sport, the reviews that I read were quite misleading, and the video clips that I read must have been toned up. It was certainly louder than stock, but probably no more than about 40%. I did want something a little more than that. I don't want to go with an X-Pipe purely because it sounds very raw and very race car-esque to me. Now that is an S62, yeah, okay, it's a racing engine, yeah, you got me there. However, I don't want it to sound like some NASCAR vehicle that starts up in the garage and you hear from 5 doors down. I just don't want that. I don't want to cruise through town and have people thinking, what is this Chach doing in his baby blue BMW with 200,000 miles on it? I don't want that. I actually took the Sport off. It is for sale right now. If you would like to buy a perfect condition Eisenman Sport 4x76, you can pair that with an X-Pipe, you can pair that with headers or cat delete or 100 cell cats or something like that. You can get a fantastic sound out of it. And honestly, you can get a good deal from me. It's sitting in my basement and it needs to go. So leave me a comment or send me an email, ryan@e39source.com, if you're interested in the Sport. It has maybe 300 or 400 miles on it. From there we went up to the race. This was a quite notable difference. It's a lot lower, a lot bassier, and it still has that great throaty kind of. It sounds like it revs higher than the stock exhaust did. It's higher pitched sound. Sounds great. Absolutely love it. I also love the look too. The 76mm tips for me are perfect. They are polished inside and outside. They're engraved with Eisenman on top. And I wasn't sure if I would like at the beginning, but I actually do. The mufflers themselves are highly polished chrome and I think look super aggressive from the back of the car. I absolutely love that. So the race for me has been a perfect fit. Reason I didn't go with the larger tips, the 83s. They nearly touch in the middle and they totally fill out the diffuser. I'm a detail guy. I want to be able to come down here with some Z6 and spend 5 minutes polishing the hell out of these. And the diffuser would just be in the way with the larger tips. I think these suit the lines of the car better. I think they suit the size of the car better. That's just my personal preference. So I went with the 76mm. Moving on to bodywork. Of course, it's this car. I've driven it through several winters. It's been through 13 or 14 winters in its life. This car's had a little bit of rust on it for as long as I've had it. This year, we pretty much finished that up. We fixed the rest of it. I had the other rocker rebuilt at the jack points about 2 years ago. It's perfect over there. I had this one rebuilt. It's perfect. It looks brand new. This one was by far the worst rocker panel on the car. I'm gonna grab a towel so I can lay down again. So I think sometime during the life of this car, somebody tried to support it on jack stands and did it incorrectly. This right here was dented in about a ½ an inch. You couldn't really see it unless you got down and looked at it. And I think that compromised the protection of the paint and this grit guard down here, and it just rusted quite badly. It would still support the car with a jack stand on it, but I didn't know about the body. I don't really trust it that much. So took it into my shop. He had this car for about 10 days. Rebuilt this here. It is like new. I'm sorry the lighting isn't cooperating. I did replace all 4 of the jack pads, and then this is the trim I was talking about right here. All of this trim on this side and the other side are new. So there's no more rust on any of the rockers on this car. It is perfect. I also had a couple little bubbles. I think it was just this side of the car touched up. We had one down here from where the door was going in, and it took some paint off. So alignment was checked there, and that was repaired. This door seam had opened up. It was the only one on this car that opened up and needed attention from here and then under this trim, which I did replace all the way over, and that had started to rust. So he rebuilt that entire seam. We replaced the trim. No more rust there. The other spot he looked at was back in this corner. We had a nice little rust bubble there. That is no more. Looks great. And then right here where the bumper fit into the quarter panel, we had some rust bubbles there, so this panel was refinished from the body line down. Paint match, I'm going to give him a 9.5 out of 10. Damn near perfect. So that's pretty much the majority of the rust on the car. I say pretty much because I think it's on the gas cap actually. There's like the most minor little thing right here. that I don't know if it ever gets any worse, I'll just have it repaired. It's no big deal. He does stuff like that all the time. And then actual gas cap rust is original. I've never repaired that, and I probably won't. I like the fact that it's original. It's got a couple bubbles there. If it gets worse, I will repair it. This car doesn't see moisture at all anymore, so it probably won't, and it'll probably stay like that. The other work I had done with the body involved PDR, paintless dent removal. So as long as I had owned the car, there'd been a couple dings in it. I drove it to Kent State University during my first 2 years as a freshman and sophomore, parked it there every day in a parking lot, and it picked up probably 3 or 4 more dings. So I ended up using Mercedes-Benz of North Olmsted in west of Cleveland, Ohio. I had the car for a couple hours. The guy was fantastic. He went around and removed essentially every single ding in the car and did a great job with it. I had a nice annoying one right here in the C-pillar. I don't know how it got a ding there. I didn't expect he'd be able to take it out, but he did. It's flawless now. There is no damage in that panel. The only thing he was unable to remove, we might be able to see above this rear door handle right up there. He can't get to that because the way the door handle is installed on the door, the hardware is on the back side of the door, so he can't get to that. But there were several in the driver's door, none of which remain. There were a couple. There's actually a crease in this door right here. That's completely gone. There's one in the quarter panel, a couple in the doors, and even one in the fender, and every single one of those is gone. And it was like $300. $300 to remove pretty much every ding on the car. That's a win. Also, I suppose with the body, I did replace both side mirrors this year. This one over here wasn't horribly bad. It was stone chipped, but I did them in pairs. So that's a new OEM mirror, painted quite well. We did the installed DIY. It's on E39 stores. This one over here, the paint had all flaked off the bottom of it. It was starting to rust because that part right there is made of metal. So that is also a new mirror, OEM, freshly painted, and they fold a little faster too. I guess the old ones had worn out. So that's better now. So of course I did my spring detail, even though it sat all winter. When it was in the body shop, I got the car back and it felt kind of like this. Sandpaper, really, really rough. Sat in a body shop for 10 days and got coated in paint overspray. So we went around the whole car. We did what I've done in the past. Clay barred it, did the full Zano. I gotta even think about it. Z5, or I guess we did ZPC. Remove the swirls. ZPC, Z6, Z7 soap, Z6, Z5, Z6, Z2, Z6, Z8. Took about 2 full days to do, and we got a fantastic product. I mean, this car still has the little ding over there. It still has plenty of paint imperfections. There's just little marks in the paint. It's a 15-year-old car. I mean, give me some credit here. So that's gonna stay. But otherwise, it really looks fantastic. Out here in the light, the reflection in the paint, it's gloss smooth. It's just beautiful. I'm really happy with how that turned out. Early in the spring, I did do the Zano on the leather. We did Z9 and Z10. And then a little later on, earlier in the summer, I had Canon actually go over everything with Swiss Vax, which I think I like. It's definitely a higher quality product than the Zano. It's about 5 or 12 times the price or something crazy, but it did soften it up a little bit and removed some shine. I guess it's a little duller now, probably how it's supposed to be, and it could probably be done again. It's been a few months, it's been out in the sun. You can see there's a little bit of wear here on this seat. I don't intend to do much with that, maybe if it gets worse. I also replaced the floor mats this year with the BMW OEM floor mats, the old ones. Really, these 3 were fine. The driver's one, the heel pad had started to wear through from where your heel rests as you are operating the clutch. This seat over here will need some attention. I'll probably find a leather guy here in the next year or so. And here's why. It's this bolster right here. Leather isn't really opening up yet, but it's certainly dry, and I think it can be repaired. So I don't know. I'm so easy on these seats. It looked pretty much like that when I got it. So I'll just keep it conditioned and have that repaired in the future, and it'll be fine. Car has miles on it. You guys know that. Speaking of, it sat stored all winter with 188,026. As of today, we're at 189,707. So I've driven it about 1,675 miles this year, which has got to be an all-time low. It did nothing but rain. May, June, into July, it rained pretty much every day, almost all day. Here in late July and early August, it seems to be quite dry, so I'm driving the car a ton and really enjoying it. Also inside, you can see the new button for PDC. That panel came from Adam from Clemster, so thanks for that. Haven't done much with anything else in here though. Just try to keep it pretty clean. We still have the ECS tuning LED lights, which I really like. And the Valentine one is still hardwired, and I certainly won't be changing that. I did do a software update on the Valentine, I believe, over the winter to the latest software, which added a junk K fighter, and it certainly has a hell of a lot less false alarms. So if your Valentine one is bothering the crap out of you, I probably shouldn't show you mine, but there's a serial number right here on the bottom of it. Plug that in on Valentine's website. They'll tell you what hardware and software version you have and what you can update to. Took about a week, cost about $105, something like that. Totally worth it though. Really haven't done anything back here. I still carry a quart of oil because it's an S62 and it burns some oil. I keep jumper cables back there for whoever. There's the PDC module that has the new blue harness that runs out to the front. The wires I had to run inside are pinned right here, and then I just zip tied everything in with that other harness. It runs behind this trim. You can see it back here where the Sirius and auxiliary and the BM53 and the Mark IV with the 2015 map DVD from eBay. 2015 is the last year that BMW is producing map updates for the Mark IV, so either for the professional version. So I would recommend you buy the East or the West or both discs. I bought both, so you can stay updated with that. But all the wires, you can actually see them right there, red, white, and black. And they all run over there, and it's very clean. This car does have the M-Audio subs. We did a DIY on that quite a while ago, and they still work great. Moving on to some future plans. This might be a little long-winded. Early in the spring, I found a very good independent BMW specialist, actually within my own zip code here, called Lyric Motorsport. I took the car there. They had remembered it. They serviced it probably about 10 years ago. They actually remembered the car and the previous owner, so that was cool. It's owned by a couple local guys. It's just fantastic. They're actually the ones who installed the exhaust. So I let them take a listen to the engine. I think the Vanos noise at the time was getting worse, and they listened to it and talked around for about 10 minutes and said they've pretty much determined it's just, you know, worsening Vanos. And this S62 didn't actually make any Vanos noise until about 160,000 miles. I don't know how I got so lucky, but it was damn near silent from when I owned it, 143 all the way to 160. At about 160 it would start the little diesel rattle on idle, and you know, every 100th start it would rattle for a couple extra seconds. Sitting for the winter, it's hard on anything. And it has gotten a little worse. I don't know if it's because of sitting for the winter or just its age combined with miles. But I would say every 10 starts now, it seems to be worse out. If I leave the car out in the sun for a few hours, I come back, it's not bone cold, but it's not warm. All started, and it just makes a ton of noise for several seconds. It sounds bad. So I took it in again yesterday, talked to these guys for about 45 minutes. They took a listen and said, yeah, the Vanos really should be rebuilt. You're looking at about $2,000 to do that. These are Indy prices, far superior than the BMW dealer would be, obviously. So we know the Vanos needs attention. Moving on from there, when the engine's idling, and maybe we'll try to record it over here, and you come over and you listen, there's a little tick. And I was freaking out that it might be rod bearings. I did a ton of research on that. They listened, they said, no, the rod bearings at this point are fine. Sounds like a little lifter tick. Said to fix that, really just go out and drive the car, go push it. I don't drive this like a race car. I'm not bouncing it off the rev limiter all the time. I also don't drive it like I drive that. It gets driven, it gets pushed a little bit, but not crazy. So he said, go out, drive the car, that should loosen things up in there and eliminate that lifter tick. So, you know, that's an issue. So we got Vanos, we got a lifter tick. Timing chain slap. I mentioned that he unscrewed the oil cap on there to listen for timing chain slap, and there really isn't any, which I was very happy to hear. I did replace that lower tensioner in the front of the engine about, maybe 2 years ago. So he said that was great preventative maintenance. It was like $100, so that's kind of a no-brainer for your M62 and S62 V8s. Replace your timing tensioners. So that was good. Now he said, really, you know, the timing chains and guides and tensioners should be done. The Vanos should be done. If you don't go out and drive the car for a while, or the lifter tick doesn't disappear, you should put lifters on it when you're doing the Vanos. So we're talking a couple $1,000s in. I'm going to classify it as preventative because the car runs fine right now. He said it's no problem, you keep driving it, it's perfectly safe. However, we are talking about a 190,000 mile M5 that I plan on keeping for quite a while. So I'm actually considering, per Lyric's recommendation, to consider and in the next few months schedule an engine rebuild. So I actually think I'm going to work towards that goal of driving the car for the rest of the summer, about 1,000 miles, maybe less. Come fall, either the month of September or October, I can take it in, drop it off. It'll be on a lift in their shop here in town, inside and safe. They'll pull the motor out and pretty much everything will be done. We'll have piston rings, we'll have a Vanos rebuild, we'll have lifters, we'll have rod bearings, we'll have timing chains, oil pump. Everything will be polished and cleaned. And essentially when I get it back, it'll be like a new motor. So there's absolutely some expense in that. They quoted me about 3-4 weeks depending on parts availability. But if I can make my decision here in the month of August, let them know in the month of August they can start to order in parts. And if we have to wait on those, no big deal, because I don't want to take the car in until fall. My goal would be to get it back. If I can drive it for a week or two and do some of the engine break-in, that would be fantastic. And then store it for winter before snow flies. And I likely will do that. I want to keep this car a long time, and with 190,000 miles on the motor, it'll certainly be, it'll certainly make me feel better having a perfectly rebuilt engine. So I think that's going to be the plan for the fall of 2015. Then in the next year, I'll probably focus a little bit more on driveline. We'll get that parking brake thing fixed. The drive shaft itself has got some rust in it, so I don't know if it should be, not much, it's just light surface rust, if that should be replaced or just refinished. Clutch has 80,000 miles on it. We can kind of visit that when the engine's out. Take a look at the clutch, pressure plate, flywheel, see if any of that should be done. And then there's a tiny bit of grease sling on the diff. It doesn't leak anything, but there's some oil sling around it. So, you know, that'll probably be my plan for 2016, to work on the driveline, rebuild the differential, probably replace the axles. They've got a little bit of pitting on the outside surface as well. But it's really coming together, and this car is going to be in good shape soon. We'll try to get a clip of some of the noise here. They pretty much all have some Vanos noise. I'll shut up now. Yeah, that didn't sound bad. Really, we just hear Eisenman more than anything. I'm gonna go ahead and pop the hood. And it's kind of halfway in between a warm and cold idle right now. Yeah, so I mean, most of that noise is coming from right here, and that's the Vanos under low pressure at idle. Vanos is not actually doing anything right now. It's not advancing timing, so at that low pressure, the seals don't hold the pressure, and that's where rattle comes from. You jump in there and you give it 2,000 revs, it pretty much disappears. So there's your Vanos noise. And then we come down here. Can't really hear much. Almost sounds like a little exhaust leak, just a little tick. He thinks it could be some lifter clatter. Nothing too bad, but that's what 190,000 mile S62 sounds like. The Eisenman race on startup and idle just has this lovely low note to it that I'm sure the camera won't pick up, but it's great. I love the way it sounds at idle. It would only be more with an X-pipe, but I won't be doing that. So I always show you because I like it, and too many of them aren't like this, but there are no issues at all. No check engine light, nothing stored in the memory. We have the parking brake and the seat belt light on, which if I plug in, goes away. And all the pixels are healthy because I had that cluster replaced several years ago. I'm gonna set the camera down in here and go out and walk in front of the car. PDC is on. You'll hear the high-pitched beeps come from this speaker right here. The lower-pitched beeps come from the back as I walk in front of those sensors. So I'm gonna set you down. Now at warm idle of 500, we hear a little bit more from the Vanos. Previous Vanos work was done in 2003. It had new O-rings, it had new seals in 2003 under warranty for whatever reason. So maybe that helps with the longevity of mine making 160,000 miles, but it's been 12 years and probably about 130, 120,000 miles since that work was done. I'm going to try to get a clip here of the Eisenman race just down the street. I'm not going to do anything crazy. It isn't totally warmed up yet, but maybe you'll hear it a little bit. So there we are. That's probably going to serve as the 2015 summer update. Any DIYs, any little jobs I do in the future, I'll be sure to film. However, it has kind of slowed down as we save money to do bigger projects. Little stupid trim here and there projects don't matter as much, and honestly, there really aren't that many to do. Cosmetics on this car are fantastic. You know, it just comes down to a couple things like the seats probably need some attention in the future, but we're going to be doing a lot of mechanical work between engine rebuild, clutch and transmission work, and then eventually driveline and diff work. But it's going to turn out great, and I'm very excited for the future of this car and to take you guys along with me. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk in a future video. Bye-bye.